You understand the actual reasons, because if the general public understands the reasons, collectively, they will make it known to those politicians by way of vote what they do and don't care about.
That's the thing. Politicians playing their own game and said, it's not that they don't understand. This is not what my voters want. If I approve this, I don't have a job 4 years down the road. So you start building that, bringing commercial, that bringing income to the city. It's a reinforcing cycle. Have more money, they spend more on the infrastructure. They have more people to spend money. And 5, 10, 15 years later, you have a city you cannot even recognize. Oh my God, what happened? That happened a couple of times in Massachusetts. There were some cities that completely reinvented themselves over the past 10, 15 years.
You mentioned a couple of times that it's difficult to build in Massachusetts. Help us understand why. Compare Atlanta versus Boston, for example.
We are a commonwealth here. Because of that, in many areas, cities that you want to build, you need to go through the planning board and all of the stuff. But in general, Massachusetts don't have that zoning allow you to build, higher density projects that meaningfully address housing shortage. You believe or not, for example, a new construction based on the code in most of the Massachusetts, you would be just qualified for LEED Gold.
But the reason it's difficult is satisfying the governmental requirements. Is that maybe better?
In a nutshell, your statement is correct. Regulation. Why they didn't move as much? We are going really as back as introducing car to U.S. cities and help hand the cities. Now you have a highway, you can travel. That is a relatively new phenomenon, about 100-year-old, that people started affording buying cars about 4 times. But the pace of changes that we have experienced on the technology and lifestyle never been matched with the change of regulation. We know how difficult it is. Churchill had a famous quote once that democracy is a terrible system until you see other. Democracy has a price. We don't like it sometimes, but one of the prices of democracy it takes time to make changes.
In the U.S., we've all recognized that the price of housing has skyrocketed. The reasons behind this increase are often nuanced and aren't as clear and obvious as sometimes it appears on its face. I'm really excited about today's guest, Edd Hamzanlui, who is the CEO of MassCan, a Massachusetts housing developer that develops attainable and affordable housing in Massachusetts. Edd and I have a really passionate, interesting discussion about his company, what he's doing, housing in particular, and what's going on, why in some cases you aren't allowed to build housing at all in some places in Massachusetts, and why in others it is extraordinarily expensive. The reasons for this and what to do about it are really important, really interesting, and really near and dear to my heart. You guys are going to love this one. Boundary Breakers is brought to you by Carter & Clark. Thanks so much for joining us. Could you tell us a little bit about your background, or sometimes I think of it as somebody's origin story? Where you were born, where you come from, sort of how did we get where we are today?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Brendan. I appreciate it. It's an honor to be here with you today. A little bit about my background. I actually have Middle Eastern background. I was born in Iran, in a construction architecture family. My dad was a mason maybe 70, 80 years ago. We lost him a few years back. He lived a good life. And I moved to the States about 15 years ago and lived in Atlanta. I went to Georgia Tech. I lived in Chicago for a handful of years, and recently, about 3-4 years ago, moved to New England, Greater Boston. And my technical background, family background, goes back to construction, design, engineering, real estate. I was an architect by training, but back in Iran. I worked in construction, mostly residential construction. And then after Georgia Tech in Atlanta, I worked for a general contractor for a handful of years, and then continued to the owner's rep side and construction consulting in Chicago. And then slowly I switched over the more financing side, investment side of the table. I went to University of Chicago, did MBA Finance at Booth, and worked for most of the transition over the last 7, 8 years happened during the COVID. Prior to COVID, I worked with a boutique private equity in Miami, and then a little bit here and there during COVID, a development shop in Chicago, a couple of brokerage shop, and I joined Merrill Lynch as the vice president of community development banking. Basically, we were in tax credit, light tech, low income housing tax credit investment on both equity and debt. And I was in a Midwest market and covering a little bit of Northeast. And after that, I joined the family office. I moved to Greater Boston to help a family office back real estate development practice. We had about 400 units at that time. My assignment was to build this department under the family office umbrella and help them to grow and build that arm that lasts for generations. Uh, that did not go as they planned, not from my side, from the family office. And we decided at that time, due to some interest rate and some financing, to pause those ventures for 2, 3 years. And at the same time, I'm talking about 2023, here in Greater Massachusetts, new administration came on board in office, and they were pro-housing, pro-development, truly pro-development. We hear that buzzword, but in reality, see what actually they do. They came with a massive $5 billion housing bond and a lot of legislative moves that you could feel. And Secretary of Housing Ed Augustus, for example, joined for the first time in a while the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Community formed in Massachusetts under Governor Healy. And Secretary Augustus coming from housing background. So all of that in 2023, while I was kind of departing from family office, I thought this is a good time actually to launch a practice here in Massachusetts. And interesting enough, at the same time, my wife is from Atlanta originally. So I lived in Atlanta and the whole Sun Belt. I worked in Florida. That area that was hot a little bit prior to COVID, during COVID, and immediately after COVID, it started cooling down a little bit oversupply word that you are hearing around. But in Massachusetts, we never had that problem because you cannot build. And I felt, okay, this might be, a good time to get into this boutique housing development. And I started MassCan at that time. I started MassCan about 2 years ago. It is a different environment to build in Massachusetts comparing to Atlanta or Nashville or Austin of the world. But we have a few projects in our pipeline. We are gearing up to start the first one, construction in early next year. In winter and spring, we are breaking ground. It's a historic project, a 160-year-old mill building in a coastal town of Fall River, south coast of Massachusetts, about 100,000 square foot. We're converting this 160-year-old historic building to 90 apartments. Leveraging different type of tax credit from historic tax credit, federal, state, and other local subsidies. That is our bread and butter. That kind of maneuvering that complicated capital structure and what to put together as a deal. I pause here, Brandon. I'm getting too much into details, and I don't want to get
no worries.
Get that.
No, I love it. There's just a bunch of you said your background's very interesting, and I just have I wanted to just ask a couple of questions about some of that. So, your father was a mason, so it sounds like architecture, just construction, building in general, is sort of in your blood. I mean, is that fair? Did you always know that that's what you wanted to do, something in and around it?
That is correct. When I was a few years old, I wanted to be a civil engineer without really understanding what that is. I wanted to be a building engineer, basically. I'm talking about 5, 6 years old. And, but that really benchmark, that really important point that I decided I want to do this, I was in high school and I was a math wizard. I was very good with numbers, physics, mathematics. But my older brother got into architecture, kind of followed my dad's path. And I really liked it, what he was doing. He was about 10 years older than me. And I really, and my sister, who's 2 years older than me, also followed my brother. And kind of that trend in my family at that time, when you're in high school, like mid-teens, uh, you start forming your idea what you want to do. And I felt I really liked it. But I got into architecture. There is, architecture here from developing countries, especially that side of the world, Middle East in general, from east to west. Our architects are different from architects here. They are running the show in most of the cases. Here, developers do. You hire architects, you hire GC, you hire engineers. But funny enough, at least in Iran and some other countries in that area, architects run the show. And the other factor
Interesting.
is we don't have any credit market. We don't have any financing available. So on that note, really, the deals are all equity. So, and you have a
Wow.
massive inflation, at least since I remember. So what we do here, we underwrite 10-year deals. That doesn't exist. So it's a very old-fashioned way to do it.
Gotcha.
You have your own money and you try to beat the inflation. On a worst case scenario, you at least kept up with the inflation. And you really never know what is the return because numbers are all over the place. And I don't want to get into the
Yeah.
politics side of that, but you know what's happening in Iran. So unfortunately, uh,
Yeah.
but we don't have that capital market. South of the Persian Gulf in some Arab states like United Arab, Saudi Arabia, they have a very established credit market. They
Gotcha.
can be working there, they have their own rules in banking, but you can basically leverage your deals with a lot of banking and financing comparing to some other countries don't have really that.
That no, that's very interesting. I was actually going to ask about the role of architect in the Middle East, particularly in Iran. That's fascinating. I'd love to spend some time talking about, you know, new residential construction. In America, in the U.S., the American dream is deeply embedded into sort of who we are as a society, and the idea of growing up one day, being able to purchase a house, is something that, as you well know, generations are still come up with that dream. There's a lot going on that potentially threatens the viability of that dream, and I think that what you're doing is trying to make sure that that dream isn't unattainable. But help us understand. You mentioned a couple of times that it's difficult to build in Massachusetts. Help us understand why. Compare Atlanta versus Boston, for example.
A little bit of history background that uh, your audience probably know better than me. We are a Commonwealth here. So Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And because of that, in many areas, cities that you want to build, you need to go through the planning board and all of the stuff. And almost nowhere in the state, again, new administration really introduced its MBTA 40B and advocate that at least some area transit-oriented cities in like a 1 or 2 mile radius, you would be able to build as of right with higher density. But in general, Massachusetts don't have that zoning allow you to build, higher density projects that meaningfully address housing shortage, right? You're still living at 20 to 40,000, even sometimes more than 45,000 1 acre per unit land requirement. And uh, it is a very basic mathematic numbers. If you want to build that type of units at the cheapest, you are on 1,900,000, 1.1 million to start with. And that's not the type of housing you want to produce. First of all, we don't have as much land in Massachusetts. But even if we did go to Texas of the world that we don't have a land shortage, it's still how many people can afford to pay that. So for that reason, the entitlement process being notorious in Massachusetts takes years and years to do that. And I don't want to get political here, but going through that process alone takes time. If you look at a piece of land, and a little bit progressive administration in general, depending on the city, not everywhere. In Boston, are a little bit extreme on environmental requirement and affordable, minimum affordable requirement, all those stuff. And that makes it very difficult in most of the Massachusetts to really materially, really build. And 3-4 years of the entitlement process, you almost always end up with a 15 or 20% affordable requirement. And one of the most, tightest energy requirement in the state. Most of, you believe or not, for example, in new construction, based on the code in most of the Massachusetts, you would be just qualified for a LEED Gold. that level.
Wow. So the minimum requirements in Massachusetts
very high.
Are LEED Gold, which is a national program, which most everywhere else is very difficult to qualify for.
Let me correct myself. The requirement is not gold, but the LEED Gold, but the codes are written to a level that are comparable, like very much close to get a gold, LEED Silver or gold in that level. So the new administration came and tried to introduce some new laws around that. Let me take a step back here, pause on this topic, and go, Brandon, to why I still am here in Massachusetts and building. Because, okay, if all you say is correct, what are you doing there? Especially you are not from Massachusetts. Well, as a developer, building it is one side, the other side is demand, right? We have no shortage of demand here. We are at the record, low vacancy at 1%, 2%, 3%. And there is nothing in the market, really, because they're difficult to build. And it is a popular state for the foundation in healthcare, education, biotech, and recently AI. Those are not easily replaceable. I love some of the other cities that are been growing for the last 10, 15 years. But the foundation that Massachusetts has are not easily replaceable. I have my own very, very theories of climate changes that make northern state of the United States very attractive over the next 20 to 30 years, from here in New England all the way to Michigan, Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota. I believe that at some point we would have more Louisiana in the next 10, 15 years that are not just insurable. And that trend that been going to more business-friendly estates, unfortunately, gonna revert to more climate-friendly estates, the more northern side of the. That is my theory. I don't really have a lot of evidence to back that. Probably won't be in my lifetime either. But over if someone looking at the next 50 to 100 years, I believe the north.
Are you saying just comfort wise, like that the bit, like, because people are going to go where the jobs are. The jobs are where the companies go. The companies are going where they can get the best, basically deal or what's the best economically for them. So for that to change to climate, are you saying that it's going to, their employees can't get insurable housing and there's more and more severe storms, it's uncomfortable, so that's going to force the businesses to go?
The business-friendly environment, I don't have the expertise to comment on that. I do not.
Okay.
So I don't know. Businesses follow their own interest. It would be a tax, climate. It would be, I'm just talking about real estate portion of that. And I can't tell you why. You are in business, real estate business, a basic operation, revenue minus operation, net operating income, just as simple as that. And the big element that everybody for the past few years been a little bit struggling is property tax. and insurance, two items that you don't have that much flexibility on. And both of them would be impacted by climate. Insurance directly would be impacted, and the property taxes also. When city needs to spend more and more money every year, it used to be every 10 years. Now they need to spend the same amount every 2 years. They have to raise that money, and let's say the obvious: federal government doesn't have that much money left, if
Yeah.
any. So they are going to local resources. And what is local resources? Property tax, right? Especially those very, like, I love Georgia, I love Florida, Texas, but zero income taxes. So if they want to keep that at zero, they have to go after property taxes. So it gets a little bit technical, but then climate cost goes up a little bit. Going up the temperature 1 or 2 degrees in Florida, that translates to the exact dollar value every year.
Yep.
And if the conversation is not already confusing, I want to introduce one more topic into this. We are talking about the transition to electric and clean energy. I had this conversation with one of our senators here today, this morning at our project, and I'm a pro-environment. Who is not? Who is not? Nobody says, no, I want to destroy it. Nobody says that. But the reality of transition to all electric, green and everything comes at a cost. We don't produce as much electricity as we want to, and it is not as easy to build the infrastructure to do that. Now we want to switch to all electric cars, EVs, this, that, but we don't have nearly enough power to support that. Not only the energy cost gonna go up, but also, okay, there are Bay Area companies, Cambridge-based companies that, hey, can make these changes in the AI and the new machine learning, and in 6 months we would have a new product. Building a power plant is not a 6 month project. And
Right.
to support all this transition to electric and energy, that takes time. I'm talking about decades. Even a basic nuclear power plant in the fastest way takes 5, 7, 8 years. And so we don't have really the infrastructure to support our ambition to go all green overnight. It really takes them. It's a good agenda, and I believe we should follow all of us. On that note, the cost of electricity is going up. It will be going up. AI is gonna sucking up a lot of it, and the consumer on the other end probably end up paying a good 5, 7, 6% more every year, and you might not feel it, but trust me, in 5 years we'll see it.
Yeah, eventually you will. Yeah. So I want to make sure that I understand the difficulties in building, whether you're talking affordable single family detached or multifamily, subsidized housing. New construction is difficult, and 90%. I mean, other than geography, there's not a lot of land, but that aside, it's government regulation. Is that right? That is
Correct.
I mean, I want to be careful how I say that. But the reason it's difficult is satisfying the governmental requirements. Is that maybe better?
That in a nutshell, these are all our personal opinion, right?
Of
I'm not a
course,
lawmaker. I'm assuming you are not a lawmaker. So we just
I'm not.
share what we think about it. And I might be completely wrong, but I share what I know and how I feel about it.
Yeah,
On that note, in a nutshell, your statement is correct. Regulation. But regulation, if you need to go back a little bit, why we are where we are, and this regulation were like 70, 80, 90 years old from early 1900s, some of them, why they didn't move as much? They were designed for that part, and we are going really as back as introducing car to U.S. cities
yeah,
and help to, expand the cities. Now you have highways, you can travel. That is a relatively new phenomenon, about 100-year-old, that people have started affording buying cars about 4 times. So, and but the pace of changes that we have experienced on the technology and lifestyle never been matched with the change of regulation.
Right.
If you know how difficult it is, democracy has a price, right? We don't like it sometimes, but one of the prices of democracy it takes time to make changes. Going
I
back
agree
to that,
totally.
going back
Just
to
to be
that,
clear, I want to make sure that I wasn't trying to suggest either way that was a good thing or a bad thing, because in some cases it can be good. I just wanted to make sure I understood
100%.
why.
I apologize. I tend to over explain everything. So, but
You're good.
to address your question, part of it is regulation. The other part that regulation hasn't caught up with the changes is the lifestyle has changed. We used to need 2,400 square foot home because family size was on average 5-6 people household. We
Yeah.
don't live that lifestyle. People don't have 2-3 massive cars anymore. People don't use that bulky furniture or TV or fridge anymore. People don't cook as much anymore. Lifestyle changed. Family sizes changed. People married later in life. The transportation system has changed. So regulation didn't catch up with that. We don't need really. So to address affordability, construction is difficult. All of that, I believe the core is we allow the right product to get built. And right product, in my view, I'm really a pro AAI missing middle housing. Rental apartment, 2, 3, 400s are great. We need everything affordable housing, rent restricted market. My point though is we need to address homeownership and attainable homeownership. And on that note, most of these attainable homeownership new construction are not allowed as of right in most of the US. That you
Or
can
not
really
what? They're not
allowed,
allowed?
allowed, yes, as of right. By that, for example, I can put really some nice 1,1600 square foot, 2 to 3 bedroom new construction townhomes, 15 of them on 1 acre of land, really high quality, and build them to the cost that 70% of the population can afford. True middle income housing, and half of the price of that 2,600 square foot single family, right? 2 car garage, 4 bedroom. But almost nowhere in Massachusetts I can build it as of right.
Why?
It's just that the code regulation are a little bit outdated. They require 20,000 square foot. That MBTA Act got regulated a year and a half ago. Now allows around some of these public transportation to 1 mile radius. They
Yeah.
let you
Well,
build. Yeah,
let me ask. I mean, do the lawmakers agree that we shouldn't be able to build affordable townhomes?
they do. And what we are doing, my day job is really to push our project forward, construction. But my evening job is just to lobby and talk to educate our lawmakers, local lawmakers, about this. And guys, there are some low-hanging fruit stuff that they can do without any subsidies, with no cost to taxpayers, are just updating our zoning and regulation, not even everywhere, just the areas we need, maybe 5 or 10% of your states. And
Yeah.
you would be surprised how little they know.
No, I'm not surprised at all. This is going to come across. This is going to come across as really cynical, and I hopefully it doesn't. My personal opinion
Yeah.
is that it is a total and complete waste of time and energy and breath to try to convince any politician anything. The type of personality that role attracts is a narcissist who doesn't care typically about anything but themselves. The people that need to hear and understand the fact that what you just said, the reason that there isn't affordable housing is because there's some archaic regulation on the books, are the general public, because that's who really doesn't understand. People are like, I can't buy it's inflation. I can't buy an affordable house because of inflation. And this person wants to blame one president. The other person wants to blame the president before, about some policy that came into being 30 days ago that won't even, but the idea that the truly, like, you understand the actual reasons. And because if the general public understands the reasons collectively, they will make it known to those politicians by way of vote what they do and don't care about.
That's the thing. General public doesn't understand it. They think they do, and they do, and they don't like it. Let me tell you, I don't defend politicians. I'm not a politician. I won't never become a good politician. That's not my personality, or just I don't know how to do it. But I understand some of them. I make a, like I made up city in my town in Massachusetts, mayoral town, with a mayor, and nice solid middle income with a little bit of touch of higher income, right? And do not let you very great town to build higher density and bring more population. The population probably never grew over the past 3 decades because just there is no supply of housing. I go to this mayor, wonderful guy, the planning board, wonderful people, all elected officials. Say, guys, this is our plan. We want to put this like few hundred units here and there, some ownership, some rental, in a very restricted area, not everywhere. That mayor and planning board, if I push hard to spend a good amount of money, they might approve this project or they might not. But if the population of that town doesn't like that project, somehow we get that approved, that mayor not gonna get elected the next round.
Right.
So, and politicians playing their own game and said, it's not that they don't understand. It's that,
Right.
hey, this is not what my voters want. If I approve this, I don't have a job 4 years down the road.
I think you're 100% correct. Where I get frustrated is if you go ask the somebody that wants to move to that town or somebody that wants affordable housing in that town, what the issue is. You'll more than likely hear, well, it's our national debt, and because this president did that, without any understanding that the keys to that castle or the regulator of that decision is at the city council, at the town council, or at the county government, depending on how the area is governed, with the municipality or city or however, unincorporated.
Brendan,
and I think that's a challenge.
Do you know what is our strategy at MassCan?
I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, because I talk about all of this, and probably your listeners asking, what is wrong with you? Then why are you doing this? Our strategy is not every town is the same. And funny enough, when we talk to other people that are in development, many of them looking for a deal size or a certain dollar value or this and that. We pick the city. We pick the municipalities. I literally, it took me months and months when I was new to Massachusetts, in eastern Massachusetts, because I knew if you build anywhere within 50 miles, 60 miles, 70 miles from Boston, you are fine. That's a very hot market. But you cannot go anywhere. Literally, it took me months to figure out which of these municipalities would let me build. Before even looking at any site, I said, okay. And I ended up with a handful of the cities. I met with the mayors, with the representatives, with the senators from those cities, areas, counties, and picked a couple of them. I said, okay, they let me build. So I go there. And I'm a University of Chicago trained. I'm not an economist, but I understand enough finance, Milton Friedman follower. Let the market, capital market, correct itself as it always does. In this case, some of the cities that let you build send a signal to the rest of the city, guys, you're open for business. And money starts going there. So you start building that, bringing commercial, that bringing income to the city. It's a reinforcing cycle. Have more money, they spend more on the infrastructure. They have more people to spend money. And 5, 10, 15 years later, you have a city you cannot even recognize. oh my God, what happened? That happened a couple of times in Massachusetts. There were some cities that completely reinvented themselves over the past 10, 15 years. And Worcester is a good example of that.
I had one of my guests was the CEO of the Worcester brush company, the paintbrush company that was started there.
So, more capital market, again, to be really grateful to have that system in the state, correct itself. Money goes where the opportunity is. And those cities said, no, 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 not in my backyard, would end up with not really as much income, not as much population. And I believe that the system, it is a slow, but it always works. It's
Yeah.
not going to be very affordable or quick, but this is not the end of it.
Yeah. No, I think it's great. And I want to hear more about the specifics about what MassCan does. And I get pretty passionate about this stuff. So I do want to be fair. There is a role for government. Government is
100%.
important. And because I think if we just left it up to business, they'd be building houses, right on the sand, on the beaches of Florida and just waiting till they got sort of wiped out. So, I mean, things like making sure that the code is updated for better hurricane resistance and flood resistance and all that. That's great. We need that. Unfortunately, sometimes it increases costs, but I mean, that's what they being the government should be focused on. That's the reason I ask why, because I can't understand if in somewhere like Massachusetts, you can't build what the market is demanding, but there isn't in other words, if your answer was, if you were in Florida and the challenge was, well, with all the new updated code for hurricane resistance, everything is too expensive, then I would say, all right, well, how do we sort of figure this out? But I struggle when the main issue is there's not enough houses because we can't build because of regulations. I mean, until and unless it
is better than it sounds. Under the hood, on the ground here, because I'm talking to all these people, elected officials, literally on daily basis. Project moving forward. There are people a little bit disappointed here and there, but I believe that with all the initiatives we have in Massachusetts and New England, New Hampshire, for example, is very pro-housing. And this is a new initiative they started a few years ago. On that, it's getting better. It is getting better, and this is a place people want to live. So it is not all dark in gloom. I'm very bullish on. It's not going to happen overnight, though.
What type of initiatives are we talking? Are these government-sponsored initiatives?
Oh yeah. For example, this MBTA Act 4DB that we touched on that. I don't remember the exact details, but for example, they recognize certain cities and towns that have a proximity to public transportation, for example. Let's say train station. I said, okay, like 1 mile radius around a train station, up to this point, we allow this density per acre, which is not as of right. And then they went after the town, follow up on our conversation. What if the town says, oh, no, we don't want it. They said, no. If you don't approve this, we're going to cut the funding to your town, the state funding. So most 95% of the city's MBTA communities approved this. There were a handful of the cities that said, no, we are going to sue you, state government, because you are cut funding back and forth. But 95% of the city approved that. So even if those 5% that decided not to follow the suit, most of the state kind of have programs around that. And this is not the only program. There are other programs. They woke up to the fact that we are losing population, basically due to housing. Brendan, I want to touch on that. I'm not defending any politician whatsoever. However, I grew up in a very non-democratic country of Iran. So I really respect what we have in this country. And I know what politicians do when they are going and try. However, one comment here. Scott Bessent, the Secretary of Treasury, very, very bright person, very, seasoned financier in the White House right now. It's like, oh, we're gonna address the housing shortage. I want to tell people this: there's not much federal government can do about housing. They can
Agree.
do with labor a little bit or with tariffs, which none of them are really pro housing right now.
Yeah, right.
And the Fed also. So they might say, oh, we want to do this, but there's not much they can do. So let's see. Local governments have more tools, but not as much as we think they do. I- I-
Yeah.
but definitely more than the federal government, for sure. Federal government really don't have many tools to push them forward.
Yeah. Well, Ed, I want to address something you said, and it's very important to me, and I think you're exactly right to point it out. It's easy to sit here and quibble and criticize the type of local regulation or whatever we have, but at the end of the day, I know I am, and hopefully most Americans are extraordinarily thankful and full of gratitude for what we do have, and it isn't.
100%.
It's not meant to. I mean, gosh, to somebody in a democratic society, it probably sounds like, listen to those spoiled brats quibbling about their great system that they have, and so that is certainly not the case. And with that perspective, I am more thankful that anyone can know to be in the land of opportunity in such a great spot. Now, here I talk about hypocritical. With that said, to piggyback on your comment, and we can jump to MassCan right after this, but I think it's important to note.
Sure.
I get just confused because the answer often to, hey, there's too much regulation here is, okay, well, we need more regulation, right? I mean, the answer to too much regulation at the local level is in my mind not more regulation at the state level or more regulation at the federal level. However, it's sometimes needed to kickstart and to do what they're doing in Massachusetts. But
100%.
given what it is, how does MassCan play a role, and what are you guys trying to do to help facilitate attainable housing?
Thank you for asking that. Before I start that conversation, let me to our prior conversation about the ruling system. Churchill had a famous quote once said, "Democracy is a terrible system until you see other systems."
Yeah. Yep.
So
Amen.
even look at the whole picture, you see, okay. But going back to what we do at MassCan to address attainable housing, always, that is our nature. There are always reasons to say no, we cannot. It's not possible. It's not feasible. We are looking for places, areas that, yeah, I can do. I can go there. There are 95% of the places that say, no, we are not. But there are places, so we're always looking to match that. And at the end of the day, we are in a market capital, market system that the dollar number has to work.
Sure.
Dollar is very doesn't care if it goes to crypto, it goes to oil and gas, it goes to real estate, or just treasury bond. You're looking at the return and the beta you want to get, and they just that they want that type of return. You have some impact investment, this and that, but they still require a certain return, right? So this is a good thing to have. So at MassCan, we are very well defined what we are doing. Uh, on we build both homeownership and rental. Our rental products are we're looking really targeting middle income. I believe that's a very sound business model to when you are producing anything for the 70% of the population. That you have access to that kind of population. Middle income is literally 70-80% of the middle people. If you cut the top 5-10, they cut top down 5-10-15%. 70-75% of the population, middle income housing, both rental and homeownership. Rental, usually we need to get a scale more than 180, 90, 70 plus units to be able to do that. And on the homeownership side, We are looking for sites that we can build a smaller units, a little bit lean floor plans, more efficient, put more units per acre, so we can save on the infrastructure, on the land, and turn that back, give that back to the buyers. So units would be cheaper, more efficient, 2, 3 bedrooms, really. And that tells us what should we do first. We are going after the cities that allow us to do that. I'm not gonna fight the cities they don't want that. I have a handful list of the cities that I know they're open to this. It takes sometimes one email to the mayor to meet him the next day. You believe or not, some of them are really at that level. Guy, you have an idea, you want to do, come here, we're open. And these two areas, building in areas to the cost that I want to meet that rent, or allow me to build those kind of products for homeownership that people can afford in Eastern Massachusetts in general.
Gotcha. So you're developing with your capital, developing to hold, I suppose, on the rental side. You're not developing, like contract developing, where somebody else comes to you with capital and says, "We want to build 200 units. Go for it." And then,
I wish that was the case. That would be great, but it is more complicated than that to find a project, a deal that pencils. So usually it is very segmented. You have a capital, you have a developer, you have a general contractor. Unless you're really big, you're at the gray star scale of the world, you're not going to have everything in-house. And that's not also, I don't want to comment on that. Being boutique and small and nimble has its own advantages. We are seeing deals that those companies never going to see. On
yeah, that's
that note,
great.
so no, we are bringing capital, we are bringing investors,
I
and we
gotcha.
are putting our own capital in all of our projects. Usually, early capital is our money. When we see a deal and we like it, it takes time and money to push that project to shovel, basically, to get it
Yeah,
ready for construction. Usually, up to that level, we invest most of the capital. Then it gets ready to actually coming out of the ground. And now we need a meaningful amount of debt and equity. We bring investors. So we always work with investors. Yeah.
gotcha. So the cities and towns that are declining affordable housing, what's the reason that they give typically?
If people don't want more housing, they don't want change. It's real. As human, we don't like change. And those people,
But why does it matter to them if they're? I mean, that doesn't make sense to me. So
I don't know.
somebody says, they just say no, sorry, not go somewhere else.
Yeah. Just we don't want more housing. Literally, we don't want more housing. That's as simple as that. We all want to be single family, look alike, and all north of $1 million to start with. And that's
Okay,
it.
well, okay. I mean, that at least makes a little bit more sense, right? If the answer is we don't want more housing because it will depress values, and we want to be a community of single family home, of expensive single family homes. I'm not saying that's correct, but at least that's a reason.
Yeah, that's
right?
the reason. That's the reason.
Okay.
And we want other people to live the same lifestyle as ours, have the same type of money to live here. And,
Okay. So this is like a socioeconomic birds of a feather
yeah,
flock together kind of thing.
a little bit over democracy, a little bit in
I
Commonwealth.
gotcha.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Do you, so when people hear affordable housing, they typically think low-income housing projects is going to bring crime potentially and not good stuff. I mean, is that basically what's the underlying current that's coming from?
Yes and no. We are not
I know
talking.
it's not. What you're building is nothing like that, to be clear.
The thing is, sometimes they don't even let you build a high-end luxury rental product. Like, guys, my apartment, would be nicer than a four-star hotel. They still don't let you build that density.
Uh,
So affordable is always one element, which I understand. But also, if it, hey, We don't have anything about that level of light tech that you used to see. Our product is just a brand name. The nicest apartment rent on a very expensive, but the density they still don't achieve.
It burns me up. The idea that those people wouldn't want their community to choose whether or not they purchase that, and if it's not a good product, nobody purchases it, and it goes away. The idea that they're like, yeah, I'm not going to let my community have those options is asinine and infuriating, frankly.
Brandon, there are communities and towns that would allow you and welcome you to build them, and they are going to win. Always been the case, always.
So let's talk about that. Yeah. So you talked a little bit about it, right? They're gonna be the example. They're gonna attract more people, more jobs, and ultimately have a larger tax base. With the new, what'd you say, MTB bill? Is that what it's called? With the new bill,
MBTA, yes,
MBTA bill, they're going to get additional benefits too, right?
100%, yes, 100%. They have access to some funding as a municipal or the city, or as a developer if you build into those in those areas. And here of combination of these subsidies, incentives you get make the project even more attractive.
That is fantastic. Well, look, I'm sure it's a lot more complicated than I'm giving it credit for, and I can't imagine what some of these politicians with all the competing interests, how the decisions that they have to make. So I do want to be I don't want to belittle those leaders and what they're up against. I just sometimes get really confused. And my hope, Ed, is I would love to just have this discussion sent to somehow get this discussion in the hands of every state and local political leader in Massachusetts. And I may be flat wrong. I may be the most uninformed, ignorant person about this issue ever, and have no idea what I'm talking about. I will admit it, but I think that it is very, very, always very helpful and healthy to engage in these discussions and ask the questions about why this is happening and is that the right thing? And if nothing else, maybe it just can get some people to think.
100%. Brendan, before we wrap up this topic, I want to tell you about outside factors that impact housing too.
Yeah.
Housing, as I said, in a capital market is not an isolated, allocation or investment strategy. And usually big institutional money or even smaller investment funds, they have allocation to alternatives, to public debt, equity, this and that, for example. I'm making an example.
Yeah.
And when you get 18, 20, 22% on your passive index, with literally not even moving a pen, and you get 4 or 5% on a T-bill, and then Edd of the word with MassCan in Fall River, Massachusetts goes and represents you a deal that give you 12 or 14 or 16% on a development project. That is not a risk-adjusted return. My point is, we were a little bit of a victim in the whole past bull market and the capital market that you saw high teens, double-digit return year after year, which is not going to continue. I'm not a financier I'm not a broker on that end, but NASDAQ, they're not going to continue like that forever. So I believe that we want to see a more balanced investment. And these are outside factors. When there is more money chasing real estate opportunities, then they are willing to work with a little bit lower return on the capital. And then developers like me that are always chasing this capital. So, okay, now you're not looking for 25%. You're happy with 16%, 18%. Now more deals going to work. So some of it are, local regulations. Some of it are labor market, the construction, this and that. And some of them are just the general capital market that we really don't have much control.
That's a really great point. right? Really, really good point. And frankly, the perhaps if the economic variables were more favorable, there would be more pressure on the politician. There would be more eyes looking at the unfavorable regulatory environment to update it. So that's a really good point. It's a really good point. And so maybe, or hopefully, when things shift a little bit and it's more balanced, maybe there's the opportunity that maybe that will be the catalyst for efficiently updating what is already a very difficult to update.
I'm looking forward to a handful of factors over the next 12 months. And I'm not getting political. They're a very practical approach because we need to underwrite them. I don't care who's in the office. I really care about the factors. One is general markets, which I have a strong belief going to cool down a little bit. And that gives more opportunity for, alternative like real estate and, consequently development. The other factor, I really am curious about the construction labor market and the macro immigration. Again, I'm not making any comment about that, but that directly impacts 50% of 23% to be exact in construction crew on the site are illegal. We did the numbers, So the other factor is the tariff. We are importing a lot of expensive material from here from Canada, but a lot is, switch gears and all of the stuff from Mexico. So that would be another factor, aluminum in some cases. But so I'm looking at some general policies on a tariff and labor market. I'm looking forward to the general market to see how it cools down. And also on a homeownership side, not as much on a rental, institutional investment, but on a homeownership, interest rate is a big factor.
Oh yeah. What do you see, and what are your thoughts there? I mean, obviously there's a lot of political pressure on Powell and all this nonsense about firing one of the other governors for whatever mortgage fraud or something. What do you have any thoughts on where you think rates are going?
Who doesn't? Everybody has an opinion.
Do you have thoughts that you would like to share?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love to talk about this stuff. I tend to believe, first of all, again, that's not a political view, but our Federal Reserve is built on the foundation of being independent, and we should leave that in bit. That's a survey came out, WSJ Wall Street Journal last week. 95% of the economists in their survey said, regardless of your partisanship, you always wanted to be independent. So that's as clear as it could be from me. But about where the rates are going to go, I believe we are not in a long-term neutral rate, which I believe would be in 3-ish, 3 to 3.5, 2.75 to 3.5. We are still 100 basis points away from that. So I believe we still, if it never, it's never going to be like that because you're always trying to balance that out. And Fed has a dual mandate. They have unemployment and inflation. And tomorrow, for your listeners that are going to listen to this, today is Thursday, September 4th. Tomorrow is Friday, September 5th, and the administration is going, not the administration, the government stats coming out about unemployment rate. That and the correction for June and July. So those numbers, ADP came out today, were lower than expected. So Fed is looking at unemployment, and inflation is close to 3% right now, inched up a little bit over the past couple of months. Not surprising. We knew it's going to happen with tariffs. But the current Fed chair and the board of governors are very bullish, very pro-employment. They have a soft spot for employment, and we are at 4.3. I believe by the end of the year, we would hit 4.5. I'm not an economist. I'm just reading and listening. And that's a red zone. So they probably cut because they care about employment at this stage more than the inflation. How much, I don't know.
Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. I could not agree more on the independence of the Fed. I think of all things government related at the worldwide level, you start messing with the Federal Reserve and interest rates. That to me, it's like Jenga. It's like yanking pushing one of those little pieces of wood through it, and the entire thing may come crumbling down.
Brennan, I love capital system for a lot of reasons. This is another system. About a few months ago, if you remember, Trump was very hawkish to take down uh, uh, Jerome Powell.
Yeah.
And over the weekend, his approach completely changed. Not because Trump changed, because the market reacted. 10-year Treasury jumped the moment he started commenting and firing Federal Reserve.
Yep.
Treasury went up. Like, because the entire world buying our Treasury, because it is independent.
It's what sometimes I think isn't really clear is we talk about people, they speak with their votes, they vote people in and out of office. People vote in that regard every day by what they buy in the markets and when they take their money out, and every it's almost a live constant voting of what they're in favor for and what they're not in favor of.
Let's get technical here. I know your listeners might got bored a little bit, but that might be helpful for them to see what is happening. Administration want to reduce the rate because the cost of the paying interest on the debt is close to 20% of the GDP at this point, close to $2 trillion. So, and most of them are floating rates. So the lower rate means you pay less for the interest. However, the key here that Scott Bessent and the economist advisor and President Trump took a step back on this, said, hey, you might be able to push the governor board or the Fed to reduce the rent, but you can kind of adjust the short-term rate. But Fed has no control over 10-year Treasury. In other words, you might be able, and over the next 12 months, Fed needs to refinance, Treasury needs to refinance $8 to $9 trillion of dollars. $8 to $9 trillion over the next 12 months. So you want to be very careful, because if you send a signal out there, guys, you're not as independent as you thought you would be. Now the investor is looking for a higher return. And all of a sudden, the coupon they are asking kind of gonna offset the, So
right. Hey, we need to refinance. Hold on one second, guys. Oh, look, we just reduced the rate. Great for us.
I love that.
Yeah. That's a perfect example of. There's a lot of people that would do that, and it's not. As soon as you do that, trust and integrity gone, and you're no longer the shining city on the hill that we are so grateful to be in.
100%.
Well, Ed, gosh, I mentioned it when we started. I could go back and forth for another several hours on this stuff. I really appreciate you and your ideas. I get a little passionate about some of these issues. Hopefully, I wasn't too condescending or dismissive or anything like that. But
you have to
I love it.
Talk real. If you want to just talk and take the same buzzword, you have to be real.
Amen.
Not everybody's gonna like it, but if you're chasing practical solution, you have to talk, and we need to be real.
I could not agree more, and I appreciate your willingness to hear some of my craziness.
Not at all.
You have a really impressive background. I love that building and construction and housing and homes are in your familial DNA. And I love what you're doing to try to bring attainable housing to Massachusetts. Hats off to you. And I will stay in touch because I want to keep an eye on what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And I think you're going to make a difference.
Would love that. Looking forward to that. And if anybody I'm writing a lot. I'm writing, talking, and my social media is LinkedIn. If anybody, I'm on daily basis, I'm posting, reading, writing, criticizing, attacking.
Yeah.
And
So I'll see if we can put a link up on the screen to your LinkedIn profile. So if people want to hear more, that's where they can find you. Thank you for mentioning that, for sure.
Absolutely. It's easy.
We'll go see what Ed's chirping about and opining on today.
Wonderful.
All right, Ed. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brandon.
Hey, everybody. Brandon Ansley, host of the Boundary Breakers podcast. I just wanted to take a second and say thank you so much for all of your support over the last year with the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor and go hit the like button, rate the episode, depending upon your thoughts, and then leave a comment or two. We'd love to hear some feedback. Also, don't forget that there are more than 50 other podcast episodes for Boundary Breakers on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or any other mainstream podcasting platform. Thank you guys so much. See you the next episode.